Hi, I'm Johnny Havoc.
And I'm Newt.
We're Simple Tricks and Nonsense, and it's been a really long time.
Since we made a video, but we say that every video that we make, pretty much.
It's been a long time not only for the video, but since we both wore our speed suits. If you watched our last video, I wore mine. Actually, didn't wear her. I thought we were going to wear our speed suits.
You know what they say? Dress for the job you want.
So we're here now.
I think the audience prefers it when I'm in costume. Comment below if you prefer it when I wear costume.
I'm sure the audience prefers it. Anyway.
We recently got back from Toylanta, which was amazing. And we made 2 brand new costumes for the con, and we upgraded 2 costumes for the con. So that's what we're going to get into right now.
So the 2 costumes that we upgraded were Mer-man and Teela.
Right, and if you've been keeping up with our shorts, you know that I've been upgrading my Teela costume to her snake headdress.
Which is, for those that don't know, for all the people that keep thinking it's Serpentor.
Why do you do that?
The action figure
in our
of
video,
Teela.
In our video, people are commenting, is this Serpentor? We're holding the action figure in the goddamn camera.
They don't know that. They know Serpentor was in the cartoon, and they know Teela was in the cartoon, and in the cartoon, Teela didn't have that headpiece, but Serpentor did.
Did they think the action figure was Serpentor?
And at the same time, gender bent stuff is so common that they're expecting, hey, is that sexy Serpentor? It's not, okay. It's the action figure of Teela.
I wonder how many people were joking and how many people were serious.
No, they were
a couple people at the con were serious, and I'm like,
that was G.I. Joe country.
Then they should know better.
Anyway, so this upgrade that she did was based upon the original toy accessory.
Right, which is my favorite version of Teela, and I had planned on doing this from the start when I had made the Teela costume for PowerCon last year, which was in August. So fast forward to a few months ago, when we're getting ready for Toylanta, this was the perfect excuse to add these upgrades to her. So
what was the first part that you started working on?
The first part I started working on was the head, the helmet part. So I have a cast of my own head, which is really weird shaped. I can't just use anybody's head.
She said it's narrow here, big up here.
It's narrow here, I'm big up here.
So she slapped some clay on
this.
It's a heavy ceramic casting of her head. She slapped some clay onto that and then began sculpting the snake.
Yes, I used some water-based clay because that's the easiest thing for us to use. We have like all the monster clays and stuff, but I still find the water-based clay is easiest and best to use.
It feels the fastest.
It does, and I feel like you can smooth it better. But yeah, so I started with that, sculpted that all by myself. Well, you helped me. We would switch on and off. But while I was primarily doing that, next door, he was working on my collar piece, which I had made him a paper template for. So we do that thing with our paper templates where we just tape all these pieces of paper together.
Yeah, if anytime a piece is longer than a standard loose leaf size, we just tape 2 or 3 or 4 loose leaf pieces of paper together and then by hand trace out what we need.
Right.
So she did that, and then she went ahead and numbered everything for me and then cut those all out and said, okay, here's all your parts and pieces. And then while she was sculpting, then I was sitting there with a razor knife cutting EVA foam out.
Right. Right, and all those little scales you see on that, all of those were numbered, so there was a lot.
Yep.
So thank you. It turned out great.
Yep, it was just dusty, making a lot of dust because you have to Dremel to create a nice little beveled edge on each one, and then glue them in sequence like you're shingling a roof or something, and then we molded your clay sculpture and then cast it in
latex.
Cast it in latex. So after the headpiece was cast and the collar was completed, what did you coat everything with? How did you paint it?
I started with a coat of black Plasti Dip. I then went over that with a metallic Plasti Dip called Cranberry Pearl, which was both metallic and exactly the color, the base color that I wanted this headpiece to be. I then went over that with some highlights of copper and a little bit of gold in there as well. And after all of that was put together, I then did a wash over the whole thing with a mixture of black and pavement gray.
And then for the eyes, the tiara, and the pearl, the eyes were cast out of, that was a...
resin.
That was
yeah,
a resin?
I enjoy doing little resin projects, so that was fun.
And then the tiara was a heated up PVC sheet that was heat bent over the ceramic casting of her head that she has.
Right. After I made that paper template, yeah, we sat there and heat bent it over that. And for the teeth, there's this product called Transparent Sculpey, which is perfect for teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Once I figured that out, that's how we make all of our teeth now for any monsters. That's what the critter teeth are made out of. That's what your boss teeth are made out of. That's what these teeth are made out of, so.
So what was the other major component that you needed for this costume?
I did the snake staff. Well, this is part of the snake staff. We have it separate so that we can travel with it or store it easier, protect certain things. But I was so ready to sit there and sculpt the snake, but looked out and bought a STL file and 3D printed this. And we 3D printed it in sections because our 3D printer isn't that big.
Mm-hmm.
But it turned out so good and it was so pretty. The only thing I had to do was sculpt the hood onto the cobra because it wasn't a cobra. So I sat there and sculpted it out of epoxy sculpt. And
so
then,
it was a normal snake and you converted it into
yes,
a cobra. Okay.
Yes. And then everything was painted with the exact same colors. I just added a little bit more copper into the center of it so that the belly of the snake was a slightly different color than the back of the snake. So what were the updates on your Mer-man?
So on Mer-man, it was a couple quality of life things that I needed to do. I needed to adjust the head, and I needed to make new hands. When it came to the hands, I had originally used the hands that we had created for Newt's leprechaun costume, and I just forcibly crammed my hands in teeny tiny little gloves. This time around, I was like, no, I was going to go ahead and make brand new hands that would definitely fit mine. So we sat with some wax-based clay. It's an alien clay is what they call it, and we sculpted those. She did the basic form, and then I went through and I just did the wrinkling and the scales and whatnot on that. Mm-hmm. When it came to the head, I wanted the head to both look a little bit different and be a little bit more wearable, because when I wore it originally at PowerCon and I would turn my head, the side gills would hit part of the collar piece. So I needed to make sure that I could try to improve that a little bit if I could. So I went ahead and created a new head from scratch. I also wanted to make new eyes for the new head so that the eyes would incorporate irises. And since the eyes have two lenses, an outer and an inner lens, that meant that I basically just had to paint the inner lens and put an iris in there. So we ended up with this, and that's the original there.
Where do these come from?
So, yeah, you can see the iris in the new lens, and you can see that the head gills or fins or whatever you want to call them are slightly different on each one.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, this one wears better.
I like the eyes in that one, definitely.
It's a little bit more expressive. It's not just like a blank stare.
Like a doll's eyes. So let's tell them about our brand new costumes that we made for Toylanta.
So the Goblin Knight and the Skeleton Warrior are ideas that we've kicked around for a long time because we have a love of these kind of creepy things. Mm-hmm. We've liked Jason the Argonauts and Sinbad and the Ray Harryhausen stuff, Army of Darkness. If it's an animated or enchanted skeleton that comes back from the dead to fight the hero, that's always really interesting to us. There's also the Goblin Knights. So you have Labyrinth and Legend and, you know, Warhammer and you name it. And Newt's height was perfect for something like that. So these are two things that for a long time we wanted to make the costumes for. The trouble was it's like never really getting around to it or never having the excuse. Well, Mythic Legions, brought out by the Four Horsemen studio, they hit all that stuff. They create all that fantasy stuff. So we can actually get toys of those kind of creatures and we can use those as our samples and then replicate that. And then at the same time, it's still, I don't want to say generic enough, but it's still universal enough that if you wanted to wear a Goblin Knight to Ren Fair, that people might think, oh, well, you're from Legend, or you're from Labyrinth, or you're from Warhammer. So it's got a good versatility to it. These costumes are just all EVA foam from head to toe.
Right.
Use templates, or a template for the helmet. It's the same exact template for both helmets, just severely modified and glued together. And you'll watch a million tutorials online on how to assemble this stuff, and that's exactly what I did. It's contact cement, it's EVA foam. There's different thicknesses of EVA foam for different sections so that it's not all a uniform thickness.
Right.
It's heat bent, weathered, dinged up, all that kind of stuff. We did our paper template method.
Right, and we both just sat out there with knives, and I was usually cutting and you were heat bending, or vice versa, or dremeling. We just trade off and pass it off to the other one.
Yeah, a lot of times. So we take the paper template and she would get started transferring it to the EVA foam, and then once she got a handful of pieces traced, then I would sit there and cut those out while she continued to trace out the others. And then
by the time I was done tracing, he'd still be cutting. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to start dremeling these pieces that you already cut. So that's just like, we're just like a little factory of two.
Yep, exactly. And that's what we did. And then once that was done, then it was time to assemble it. So that meant the pieces which had just been traced and then just been cut and then just been dremeled, well, then we mark which pieces went together and where they should fit together. Apply the contact cement, let that begin to set up, glue that together, hand it off to the other person. The other person would then take the next component and then add it to it. And again, just that assembly line from beginning to end.
It was the same with the painting?
The painting was,
coating?
Yeah, the coating was virtually the same way, where first everything got a Costa Plastidip, just black Plastidip, and that provided an initial coat. And then once that was dry, then we used that creature cast stuff, which is a black neoprene and it's brushable, and we slopped that on there and let that dry, and then slopped on the second coat and hit it with the heat gun real quick so that it would...
Johnny did the short with, he showed that technique of the texturing that he did on the armor.
So that on the second coat, it does the texturing technique, and it looks like rusted or poorly forged metal. And then we let that dry overnight, and we went through with, and we had, what, like 6 spray cans of different spray paints?
Yep, just so we could both be there spray painting stuff at the same time. And like, I'd be like, okay, this one's got the first coat on it, hand it off to you. I'd pick up the next piece because there were so many pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
But it goes so much faster with 2 people.
We're in the backyard, and we're both doing the base color on everything first. And then it was like, okay, well, I need to do the black speckle. All right, hand that off. It's like, okay, now you do the bronze speckle and then hand that off. When it comes to the armor, I think we use, on average, we use about 6 different colors. And that's just spraying it on there. That's before we do any dry brush or anything like that. And then we intentionally try to make it look like the goblin had a more brownish tone and the skeleton warrior had a more silver tone. Because the idea is that you have these 2 different cultures. You have one's formerly a human culture and one's a goblin culture, and they have 2 different ideas on how to accomplish their armor making. So the skeleton warrior has a more ornate looking, and then the goblin one, of course, it's spiky and pointy and a lot of things that mimic their ears or their noses and stuff like that. And after that was done, we just sat there and we weathered everything again in assembly line where one person's sitting there with a big fat brush and they're taking our standard diluted acrylic pavement color and working that into all the crevices and cracks.
Yep, to bring out the rest of the armor. The only other thing we did that wasn't armor based was the latex ears and head for the goblin. And then of course you did your skull mask.
Yeah, so her ears, this is a method we keep reusing again and again just because it's easy to accomplish. It's a EVA foam that's, again, cut from a template, heat bent into shape, so you have the outer ear and then some of the other cartilage portions of the ear. That's all created. And then we take it and we either brush it on, or hopefully if we have a bucket deep enough, we dip it in a color-tinted latex so we don't have to paint it as much. So in the case of the goblin, it was latex that was tinted green. And then dip those in there and then hung them up outside, let them drip off, let that dry, do a couple coats of that. For the skeleton mask is a cheap $10 Walmart mask that has like the moving jaw. And what I had to do on it was I ordered the bodysuit and I had to wait for the bodysuit, which had the skeleton on it. And then once it arrived, I was then able to color match the bodysuit to the mask, and I just went through and painted the mask.
And God, that paint job made such a difference in the mask.
It did. I was worried that you could tell too easily that the two things were different, but it matched pretty well.
Yeah, it did.
And then what else did we do for that stuff?
That was it.
Well, we recycle stuff. So we have the mold for her leprechaun.
Oh yeah.
So since we had that already, again, using that same green tinted latex that we already did the ears with, we did a brand new casting of the leprechaun's face, and then she weathered that.
Yep.
And then we added eyes.
Yep, to where it looks almost like the Green Goblin. But the reason we didn't sculpt a whole new face is because you can barely see it through the mask, and I didn't want to waste a beautiful head sculpt. Though that might be an update I do later.
Yeah, it's one of those, you only deal with what people are going to see.
Right.
So if people are pretty much just going to see the bridge in the nose and the eyes, that's all you need to be concerned with.
Right.
And the leprechaun mask satisfied that well enough.
Yes. So we finished our costumes. It's like 3 weeks before the con. And
Yeah, well, I mean, we didn't get finished 3 weeks. It was a little...
No.
But 3 weeks before the convention, yeah.
We finished the week before the convention.
Yeah.
But what happened 3 weeks before the convention?
3 weeks before the convention, code name Newt and Johnny, a.k.a. our friend Shabir, who he's retro video gamer, comic book collector, G.I. Joe enthusiast, YouTuber. His link will be in the description and his logo will be on screen right now. Anyway, he hits us up and says, hey, you guys are going to Toylanta, can I go with you? And sure, the more the merrier. So the three of us loaded up into a van and spent 8 hours driving up from our house up to the Atlanta area. And it was fun. We had a great time. Time flew by.
It really did. He was awesome to hang out with. We kind of just chatted about nerdy stuff. We actually tried to film some videos on the road just because we had so much time to spare, but the audio was not very good.
Yeah, lots of road noise.
Yeah, we're still working on trying to film in the car and everything, so.
But yeah, we're going to play some of that just so you can see the situation, see how full the van is with junk. And if you guys want to play Mystery Science Theater 3000 at home, you can. Just know that it's probably complaining about Star Wars and pop culture and G.I. Joe and all that kind of
What do you
stuff.
expect when you put three nerds together in a car for 8 hours?
Terminal intensity, when what I should have said is, Dad, you're right. Well, let's give Krull a try, and we'll discuss it later. The Phantom Menace was 18 months ago,
Bilbo.
Tim.
Okay, it still hurts. You know, that kid wanted a Jar Jar doll.
Kids like Jar Jar.
Why?
What about the Ewoks? Hey?
I punched a bloke in the face once for saying Hawk the Slayer was rubbish.
So it was a great weekend. Toylanta was a lot of fun. It's one of those things, and I did a post about this. You do all this preparation, and you spend all this time ahead of time, and it feels like it takes forever to drive up there. And then the next thing you know, this 3-day convention is over and done with. So it really is time flies when you're having fun.
Yes. Oh yeah, we saw people who we hadn't seen since PowerCon, so since August. One of them being Pixel Dan, who...
You mean Digital Dan?
It's an inside joke. Maybe we'll let him explain it if he wants to.
Yeah, Pixel Dan, who it's great seeing him each and every time. His energy level is always so high.
Yeah,
and then
he's always a joy to hang out with.
Yep. And then there was also pretty much the man that helped set this up for us, Brett Barton. We met him at PowerCon. We talked to him a few times. He was the one who planted the seed for the idea of this and laid the groundwork. He was the one who got us out to Toylanta.
And he's just amazing to hang around. It's not often that you meet somebody twice and then it's instantly like, okay, you're one of my new best friends.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So even though the convention itself was busy, we had some extracurricular activities afterwards. We were able to go out and hang out, and he took us around. Again, toys were the center focus, but we had a great time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All in all, the convention was great. I mean, there was tons of vintage toys, and if you were into G.I. Joe, you were in heaven. One of the heavy hitters, or something that really drew a big crowd, were the Mythic Legions, and they had like a whole corner display, and people were showing up early so they could grab everything they could. Those guys always had a line.
They always do.
Yeah. And so we showed off our Mythic Legions costumes to them, and they were asking us questions about how it was made. It was wonderful to like sit there and show off our effort that we're just mimicking what they had done, and it was a lot of fun. We got photos with them.
Each and every one of those guys is just awesome. We also helped judge the costume contest again, which was really fun.
Yeah, that tends to be our job, which I think we volunteer for it most times. But
yeah, we do.
But yeah, there was some great costumes that came out. The kids were wonderful.
Oh, they were adorable.
We got to answer some more questions at our booth concerning costumes and techniques and different disciplines, and that's always the most fun for me, is to share these ideas and to see what other people are doing and how they're accomplishing what they're trying to get done.
Yeah. So Toylanta was a huge hit with us, and we think it's going to become a new staple, and we hope to go again next year. So thank you, Brett, for everything.
Yeah, thank you. It was so much fun. We had extra fun because in the area that we were situated in, there was all these makers, and we get to ask them questions, and we get to see their techniques. And we had guys airbrushing and people making molds, and we had another guy vacuum forming, and all this stuff going on. It was a lot of fun. It was the kind of thing where if you watch our videos, you know that we gloss over stuff. These are not tutorial videos. We will simply say like, oh, I use this to make that. It's like, so we encourage you to watch tutorial videos. We also encourage you that if you're curious about techniques or different disciplines or whatnot, that besides watching the videos, look up for maker fairs in your area, because they're a great source of inspiration to see what people are doing and what machinery or what kind of equipment they need to get it done. The other thing I want to ask you guys is, what would you think about if we did some kind of live stream in which you guys in the chat could ask us questions about certain costumes, or
Our Q&A videos.
Q&A, or what's your favorite this, or what's your favorite that, or who would win in a fantasy fight between this person and this person? You guys could ask us that. What do you think of that? We'd love to do it.
Well, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.